Next, I wanted to talk about airlines that allow birds and a little bit of information on travel when it comes to parrots, because I've seen some reels and YouTube shorts of somebody having their bird in cabin. And a lot of people were asking questions in the comments saying, how do I fly with my bird? How do I do this? Which airline is it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to very quickly go over this. You can also check out episode 19, where we talked with Anna, who has a sun conure named Papush, and they have traveled the world. Her bird, her sun conure, is not only harness trained, but has also traveled across Europe, across North America. They've done international travel. They've done domestic travel by plane. They've also, taken the train and the car and all that good stuff. So she is very well traveled with her bird. And I do encourage you to check out that episode. I also have a video on YouTube on all the things that you need to do when you're preparing your pets for travel. We have actually not done international travel with a bird, but we have gone through the entire process. And so I wanted to debunk a few things from those videos that are going around. And one of those is that domestic travel in the US is a lot easier with birds. There's a lot more airlines that accept birds, like off the top of my head, Alaska Airlines, Delta, United, and there's a few more that allow birds in cabin to fly domestically within the US. They might even fly to Canada. But of course, there's also a lot of paperwork involved in traveling with a parrot. The first thing that you need is to have your bird's paperwork, where they came from, all of their information, and all of that. You also, for us, we also needed a vet certificate. So I would assume that most countries also need that. And then you need to contact the authorities. Usually it's CITES. You need CITES import, you need CITES export. Different authorities take care of that in different countries. In Canada, it's the CFIA. Um, it's different authorities, and it starts with CITES. Then you need vet certificates and all this other stuff. So it's not simple. Domestic is a lot easier than international. International, you need the CITES, you need the import, you need the export, you need the certificates of all kinds, and you have to time things out accordingly. There might also be quarantine before leaving the country, when arriving to the country, depending on the countries. So there's a lot that's involved with international travel with birds. Unfortunately, it's not very easy like it is with dogs or cats. And in Europe, there are two airlines that I found that allow birds, or sorry, I should say three airlines that allow birds to travel in cabin within Europe. One of those is Iberia. It's a Spanish airline, but they don't have a lot of flights. And when I was actually looking at their flights, all of their flights have a layover in London, in Heathrow, or somewhere else in the UK. And you can't fly in and out with your parrot in cabin in the UK. So it just makes that not even an option, that airline, especially if you want to take your bird in cabin. I believe in cargo, it's an option, but I wouldn't want to put my bird in it. And now I've heard way too many stories that I would be nervous about it. But some birds and parents have done it, and their birds were totally fine. So again, it's also an individual situation, how desensitized your bird is and all that type of stuff. You always want to make sure of like the temperature being regulated and good air quality and all that type of stuff when you have a bird, especially if it's a small bird. Big birds and small birds are sensitive just the same. So yeah, with small birds, I just look at it like they're little babies. Another airline that allows birds on their flights, and I believe in cabin, but they only have flights within Europe, is Vueling. And the other one was Turkish Airlines. And some of the videos that I saw with people and their birds on an international flight in cabin was actually with Turkish Airlines. And what people don't realize is that Turkish Airlines only allows budgies, and I think it was canaries, in cabin. Otherwise, you cannot bring your bird in cabin with Turkish Airlines. I mean, you can try and talk to Turkish Airlines if you have a bird that's similar in size to a budgie, perhaps a lovebird, and they might make an exception, but it is very hard. And then most airlines don't take birds. Those are the airlines that I know of that allow in cabin within the continent or within the country. So we're talking about Europe or like the States here. And when it comes to international, there are a handful of airlines that will allow your bird in cargo, but not in cabin. And one of those that I can tell you for certain is Air Canada. I believe they do allow in cargo. Another one that sometimes people mistake is Qatar Airlines. They they do state on their website that they allow birds in cargo, but they only allow hawks. And I'm like, who is traveling with a hawk? So, yeah, if you have a big bird of prey, then you can travel with Qatar and have your bird in cargo. So it's not easy. On top of that, there's also the bird influenza map, and you have to follow that. So if you are in an area where there is bird flu, then you're not going to get approval for the paperwork for export and import. So international travel with parrots is very difficult, and not every airline is very bird friendly. Actually, most airlines are not bird friendly. There is a handful of them that allow birds in cargo, and there's even fewer that allow them in cabin. And the ones that allow them in cabin, it's usually within the continent or within the country. International travel at this moment is very difficult with parrots. And after looking through literally all of the airlines, I can tell you that there is not one airline that I have found that allows birds in cabin for an international flight. I have emailed airlines. I have spoken with them through their chat on their website. So believe me, I have done my research on this, and it's very difficult, and there's not a lot of airlines that are open to it, but I hope that in the future there will be more. There are airlines that are private, like charter airlines, that will allow dogs to be, sitting with you right beside you or have their own seat. I believe they even allow cats. And when I was emailing and asking questions, there was a few that said yes, they would take birds or even snakes and reptiles as long as you have the correct paperwork. So if you want to fly in cabin internationally, the only option that I can offer to you at this time is flying private. And I think that in the future, more airlines are going to become more open to it. I've noticed that there's a lot more airlines nowadays that allow dogs or are making dogs a priority. So there's two airlines that I would like to mention. One of them is Bark, and they are a new airline that I've seen pop up. And I think that they're just in the States right now, but it's by Bark Box. That's why it's called Bark. And if you look them up, they're called Bark Airlines. And basically, they allow dogs and they cater to dogs. It's an airline that caters to dogs. So I love that. If you also were interested in this, then I can also recommend K9 Jets. This is from their description on Instagram, the world's first pet dedicated pay per seat private jet service. So you can take your dog on there, and it's pay per seat. And I also reached out to them and asked them if they would accept birds. So K9 Jets was one that said that if you have an international flight, as long as it's somewhere where they're flying to and from, and they fly out of and to New Jersey, USA, then they would take your bird as long as you have the correct paperwork. Now, into the USA, there is a 30-day quarantine for your bird at a specific quarantine facility. So this is something that you would also have to arrange if you chose to fly with K9 Jets. And there is a fee. I can't remember what the fee is, but it is a few hundred for the 30 days from what I can remember. But please look into it because these things change all of the time. They can change every few weeks, they can change every few months with airlines and restrictions and requirements for paperwork and all these different things. They are changing and sometimes they stay the same, sometimes they're not updated. So please, if you're thinking of traveling with your bird, whether it's domestic or international, make sure you do the research, contact all the right authorities, ask all the questions, get all the answers before you book anything because it can be a tedious process. It can be a long process. There are a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails to make when you're doing this. So that is that on airline travel.